I'm Darlene Wolnik. I work for marketshare.org in New Orleans, Louisiana. And our organization runs the Crescent City Farmers Markets, which started almost exactly at the same time as Fresh Farm. And we met Ann, I think, first, right at the very beginning, and have used their excellent example as well as our friends in Seattle's excellent example to set up our markets. But always from the very beginning, our organization, and I think Bernie's organization and Chris's organization in Seattle, have always realized that we also need to do it, but we also need to share it as well. And that's what I think is different about our field, that the farmers market movement has been a very open movement, sharing information, building resources for itself. And over the years, we've done that relatively informally. But recently, marketshare.org was able to actually define our work within the sharing of information, which we call, of course, market share. And I became the director of the Market Share project, which is still relatively undefined what I do. Mostly what I do is to come to conferences and learn, and to do evaluation, and to look for ways and policy and investors to understand where farmers markets are coming or where they're going. And ultimately, we hope that there's a whole sheaf of tools and resources that are available for public markets to use to grow their field, and that allows for the ever-increasing growth of farmers markets and the stability of them. And so my work is very much around the analysis, the data collection, the analysis of farmers markets specifically, but public markets overall. And, you know, I say that, and I don't even know what that means, because it means whatever it means at the time. But right now, what it means is that I am a lot to do with trying to measure markets. And, you know, that word measurement's used a lot. Talk about markets, and, you know, I'm not sure. I think it's like sustainable. I'm not sure it's the right word. You know, I'm not quite sure it's the word that we all understand, or global warming even. Is it warming? No, it's global instability, and probably a better word to use. But we say global warming, and now we're sorry we do, because if it gets colder, people think it doesn't happen. But, you know, measurement. I mean, when people hear that, they think, well, I can't do that. I'm too busy. I'm a small market. I can't do all that measurement stuff. And we want to talk, both Bernie and I, about some of the ways that you can do measurement, small and large. And I will point out, which I often do if I work with Fresh Farm or Seattle, that our organizations are pretty much the same size. And so people say, wow, you're so big, so many markets. And they run a lot more markets than we do. But, you know, we started off with one market the same. We had 6 farmers the first day. After a year and a half of looking for farmers, we could find 6. Wow. Because the farmers said to us, in all these parishes, you know, our name for counties, parishes, it said to us, well, that's great, but I'm not going to New Orleans. I'm not coming to New Orleans. And our founder, who's a pretty charismatic guy, could only get 6 people to come. And then he also had about 5 or 6 backyard growers, urban community gardeners, of which he was one. And he started the market. And they all sold out that first day, and he just kept building and balancing supply and demand, and sometimes he had more than the other, and it was, you know, it was a fight. And before Hurricane Katrina, we were running 4 weekly markets a week, and we had about, year-round, we worked with about 70 or 75 farmers, fishermen, and producers. We're back down to about 60, if we're lucky. But, you know, and we run 3 markets a week now. But 6, remember that number, 6 farmers. And we just started. And, you know, we just made sure we balanced everything from the very beginning. So even though we're talking about some pretty fancy stuff here, starts with 1 market, 4 hours a week. How do you evaluate success? So this is, you may have heard of this triple bottom line. The Farmers Market Coalition has communicated this as a part of their organizational information. And I think I just copied this right off the website. Clearly, when the Farmers Market Coalition was started in 2006, the founders, which were many of farmers market directors and managers and farmers around the country, said, well, we want to do this because we think there's a need to have a bigger conversation than just the little citywide conversations or regional conversations, but let's do something that we all agree on. Well, that took a while, but pretty much this is what they came up with. Is this still accurate, Stacy? Okay, I was just checking on. So you can see what they've done is they've said, okay, they're balancing different needs. Farmers market, they wanted to find the farmers market within this coalition as having these benefits. That is, I think, the very same sort of information and language we use within Market Umbrella. This triple bottom line or this balance sheet, many fancy phrases for it. But that's basically, in our world, what we're going to measure. This is what we say we do. We're going to measure that. So in order to do that, we're going to do it, we're going to evaluate it, then we're going to share it. I'm sure many of you know the definition of insanity, as many business people call it, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result from it. And that's what you see a lot in market management. You see a lot of times when market managers have a problem and that problem continues to happen and they just don't fix it. And a lot of it, I think, is about how you evaluate. So you can say measurement, you can say evaluate, you can say how's it going. That's what we're talking about. So you have to do it and then you have to evaluate it. That's, you can not share if you don't want, but you really should do it and evaluate it. Because then you want to make sure if it didn't work, you don't do it again. So that, if you keep that in your mind, whatever you're doing, how did we do today? How did we do this week? How did we do this year? That's what you're going to measure. So these are the kind of questions that I think markets ask themselves if you want to talk about measurement. We ask farmers, we did an event. We say, did that work? Did you make more money today? That's evaluation. Again, shoppers, we talked a lot about organic and price points and, looking at that question and trying to actually evaluate it. What is the problem? Do people want more organic, or is that just something I think they want? Or do they really want more pesticide-free foods? That is part of the evaluation. Neighbors, I don't see that as much as I'd like. Of neighbors who have farmers market, we assume that we're useful to the neighborhood. But as many people know, when markets start to grow and businesses are losing parking spaces, they start to say, why are you in my neighborhood? Unless you've been able to communicate, we do this, it helps you too, here's an evaluation of how we help you as well. And that, I think, is obviously, I get more calls probably about that particular question. How do we convince our city or neighbors we're of use to them? And my answer is always, you need to show your worth to them. What is it you say you do for them, and then measure that. And mostly what we say is we as farmers markets say, we bring tax dollars. They stay, as Peter has said, as people have said today, they come to the market and they stay and spend money in that neighborhood. That's pretty simple. So that usually will take a long way. I mean, obviously, Bernie can say she gives just tens of thousands of dollars to the city and parking meters, and, I can't believe every time I tell people that she has to pay for parking meters. They don't believe me. And then governance. We haven't talked a lot about this, really, in the sense. We've talked a lot about structure, which I think is great. Having a board, what kind of board would you have? Friends of the market. How do you use your board? That really becomes a lot of the questions that markets have. You have a board, they're great people, but we either tend to underutilize them or overutilize our boards or expect them to manage or not. You need to evaluate them. You need to evaluate the structure that you have. They need to make sure that the structure you have fits what they want. We've changed our governance last year. We were at a university for 13 years, Loyola University, and because we're kind of the same as Bernie's situation, which was we were there already. Our founder was there and asked if he could start this little project of a farmers market, the Social Justice Center. And they said, sure. And then it became this huge thing, bigger and bigger and bigger, especially after Hurricane Katrina. And the university basically said to us, you know, this doesn't fit in with us anymore. It's too big. And we realized we really should have evaluated that probably a year or two before that. We really should have. We really were not paying attention to the fiscal agent's needs and saying, you know, is this still a good fit? We kind of have started to have the conversation, but we didn't do it enough. And when we decided to part ways, it was perfectly amicable, but it was a little bit more rushed than either of us would have liked, because we both of our boards were like, okay, let's get this done. So we became a 501c3 last year, and yeah, we had to rewrite our application too, and get it through the second time. And we looked at our governance and made a few tweaks to it so that it would really work for the organization that we were in 2009. So we can talk about that in more detail later. But basically, what I mean by that is we have to evaluate it. You have governance. Do you need to add or subtract to that? Look at that in a few years. Not too much, but you need to look at it. A board that has people that were useful to you when you first started, those skills may still not be as useful to you as you may need other skills on your board, and you need to look at that. And then investors, funders, foundations, government, what do you want to learn? So these are the very simple ways that you can think about your measurement of your market. So these are the tools that I'll talk about quickly that we use. And I know there's some questions about some of these. So Bernie and I are both going to cover this a couple times. So you'll hear some of this from Bernie in a little bit as well. Customer counts, vendor counts of product. Counting, there's lots of different ways of doing customer counts. The way that Fresh Farm does it in D.C., I think is the same way that Seattle does it.
Right.
They're very busy markets. For them to count the whole time, I think would be, I mean, DuPont Circle, I don't even know how you would do that. I don't know how you count it one time an hour. I don't even know how you do that. We definitely like that idea, but we tried at the very beginning to count everybody. We would actually have volunteers stationed. Our markets are much smaller. And we had people stationed outside and actually have them count every single person with the clicker. And then we would talk about shopping groups. You know, there's all this language now about how you count people. If they're coming together, you can minus by a certain amount of a shopping group. You can count kids or not count kids. I always joke that when the volunteer says, should I count kids? I'm like, if they have money in their hand, count them. And my feeling is everybody that comes to market is probably going to shop. I mean, there's probably a few people that don't. But if you come and you're with your friend's going to wander off to the baked goods and get something, probably. You know, I don't believe we'll just come to again, I don't think they come out in the sun, the rain. It's not like going to the mall and you can sit in the middle and just zone out. You really have to be interactive. So I think if they walk in the market, they're a shopper. But again, there's some technology to look at and some information. But customer counts are absolutely a phenomenal way for you to measure your success. You've done it every week at
we
DuPont
do it
Circle.
every week at...
I mean, all of yours, but I mean DuPont Circle from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, from the first market year. And we count, you know, you can get these little clickers at Home Depot, Office Supply Place. And it used to be at DuPont, it was very easy. You walk through the market on the half hour, count everybody shopping in the market. Okay. Now it's a mob. It's really tough.
Get a ladder.
But in the smaller markets, what we do, you can look out and count every single person. And then on the 15-minute, we have them count again just to see who new came into the market. Because sometimes in smaller markets, people don't stay that long. They're 15 minutes, they're out. So we add whatever new people have come in that 15-minute increment. But at DuPont, it's impossible to do that. Yes, we miss some people, we double count some people.
But over so many years. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think is what you have there is you have this extraordinary weekly, I think there's a couple things in that. Obviously, the vendors see active management actually trying to evaluate themselves, which they get. I think her numbers she may have undercounted, overcounted, whatever, but over a period of time, she's probably getting a pretty good average. And I think that's a very, very simple retail way to measure, which is very common in retail. Yes, Peter?
Yeah, we
That's what we've done.
We do that for 10 minutes every hour, and then we multiply by 6.
Yeah,
we get a sense of how many people are.
That's right.
If you counted who's on the ground, then you count everybody who stayed more than an hour twice.
I mean, there's different systems.
I guess I don't get the concept of counting how many people are on the ground. It seems inaccurate. Maybe it's the only possible way.
No, there's different ways of doing it. I think there's arguments for each of them. I think for people that are counting, I mean, there's a whole thing around how long people stay at market. We've done a little research on that, and of course, that's a very wide number. I think the average we have seen in the things we've measured is that it's really closer to 15 or 20 minutes that people stay at markets. Again, very different in different markets. So we went to Seattle and measured our way against their way, that way, and we counted 15 minutes into the hour and then multiplied by 3 because we think people stay 20 minutes. And go into more detail, but basically in the height of the first round, the first 20 minutes, we counted everybody, and then we multiplied that by 3. And we found our numbers were pretty close to what Chris Curtis had counted with her clicking at the once every hour. And I'm sure you have some tweaking of that.
We have some people that are a little heavier thumb on the farmers market count than others.
Who's been doing it that day?
We asked them not to count the babies and the dogs.
Dog shop too.
So, but I think that our experience with the DuPont market, people are staying that 15 to 20 minutes and then turning over on the half hour. That's what we saw that first year, and it seemed to make sense to do it on the half hour.
Right. I'm sorry, Sarah and Aaron, you guys had.
Yeah, I think basically covered that we do surveys to figure out approximately how long people stay. Count once an hour and multiply from there. Right. Not just it's not accurate, but it gives a picture of what's going on at the same time. If you count it 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 every week, you kind of get a snapshot of what's going on.
Right.
That's a good way to look at it, which is a snapshot.
Exactly.
Right. You also know when your peak hours are.
That's right. Which can change. And that's always good to know.
Yeah. We have a flower grower that actually runs a tape every week on each one of his sales. And so at the end of them, we used to match against his tape to see how many customers he was coming. Not everybody buys flowers, but to see, again, how close we were to that kind of number. So I think we were on, actually. We're very close.
Do people stay longer if you have a chef that expresses music?
Yeah, and that's it. Like when you do these measurements, and we'll talk about the different measurement tools that we have, Seed, Need, coming up soon, Feed, that we use. And, we say if you're going to do a really intense survey day, don't pick your event day. If you have events every week and you have cooking demos, well, that's your rhythm. And so you'll get a sense of it. We did cooking demos for a decade, and from 10 till 10:25, that crowd came. And then they were gone, and so it was interesting because it kind of got faster and faster. They stayed less and less actually. But yeah, of course, during events, cooking demos, and you should measure both. And you can do that by just watching and getting a sense of like watch someone come in, who's a regular shopper, to kind of gauge how long they stay. Interestingly, we did that and then asked the people how long they thought they stayed. They stayed half as long as they thought they did. Like they would say to me, I was here a half an hour. They were there like 8 minutes. The quality of their interaction was so intense. That was interesting. It's part of our social capital measurement. But it is really interesting because, of course, you can't go by, I think I was here for 10 minutes. And New Orleans especially, they could be there hours. And they don't know.
It's really interesting when you start doing the counts. When I get the reports from the market staff and I hadn't been at market that week, I can tell, even before I look at what the weather was, the weather impacts a whole lot more because I can tell, boy, it was a really bad day. Nobody's coming out. What happened? Was it snowing? Was it raining? Whatever. And you can see that very much.
But it's a great little simple way. And that little clicker can stay in your hand. I see that with markets, Fresh Farm, Seattle's markets, like literally it's just almost attached to their finger, constantly. I mean, I've been with Ann talking with me a mile a minute, walking through, talking with 5 other people, and she's counting while she's doing it. She's been doing it for so long that she can do that. So counts, and we can talk, we can role play that, and break time, this kind of stuff. A lot of this is about how do you want to do it, and we can talk through some of that. Some of the other simple tools, mystery shop. If you did retail, you might have seen this in your own other life. But I brought this from corporate retail that I was doing. And I said to our founder, executive director, well, I think we should do mystery shops. And he thought that was great. So great that we could do that. And so we created, it's actually got a handout for it. It's got one of the little pies on it. And it's simple. And you're basically, this is a shop around customer service, basically of the market staff. That's what this mystery shop was designed to be. We've done it for years. What we do is we have a volunteer or a friend or somebody that isn't regularly part of the structure of the market come in, and they've already been figured out who they're going to go to, what questions they're going to ask. There's only a couple of questions they're going to ask, and they don't have the paper with them. And they go through a regular a shopping experience, and they write down their evaluation and give it to me. Friends of mine do it, and I remember one time my friend Renee did it for me, and I sent it to my Thursday market, and one of the questions, it may still be on there, was the front of the market something? And she wrote, I don't know what you mean by the front of the market. Like what I thought the entrance was not clear to her. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought that was a problem. But she's like, there were 4 entrances, Dar. Which one were you talking about? I'm like, oh, so I'm putting all this effort into what I call the front. She doesn't see it. She probably came in the back way, knowing her. So that was really useful, and it's a really simple tool. You can use it. Mystery Chef is kind of the same thing. I don't use it as much because it's a little more complicated, but basically it's the same sort of thing, which is we give it to a volunteer, usually a volunteer, to go, we give them a little bit of money to go buy a product, to take it home and try it. Because, it's not so much the new products you sometimes have to worry about. It's the stuff that's been in the market for years. And someone's kind of losing a little bit of their interest in carrying it. Or maybe they're just, the quality isn't, you can kind of see it. It's like, oh, that's not what it used to be. Well, this is a way to say to someone, look, it talks about the presentation of it. It talks about the quality of the product itself, the price point. And I have a particular volunteer, my friend Judy Cerise, who's in her late 60s. And she'll be furious that I said that. And she does it a lot for me because she loves it and she's very good at it. She's really established, really wonderful palate. And she's been in the market volunteering since day one. And she buys stuff and goes home and gives us a beautiful, and mostly it's good news. And so they can take that thing and put it on their table saying, look, I got this great Mystery Chef evaluation. It was a way for us to check in on the stuff that had been at the market for a while, which we know market managers can be an issue. Vendor surveys. Vendor surveys, other markets do this better than we do. Bernie does this very well. Chris Curtis does a phenomenal job. She just gave a presentation with Bernie and I about vendor surveys that she does, and hers was interesting because this year, when she has all these issues right now in her 7 or 8 markets, some market spaces are, she might have to move a couple markets, there's some pricing issues, some competition issues, and she did a survey not saying, here's the issue, what should I do? But here's the issue, how important is this issue to you? Here are the 4 issues I think are happening in this market. Rate them, how important they are to you as vendors. I thought that was a great way to go at it, because then she can see that, well, the vendors are not that interested in talking with her on this issue. Maybe she can just, maybe she should just make a decision. They're pretty much saying, just go ahead and make a decision. So that was a great way of doing it, and I think that's available. It's either available in the thumb drive, or I'm sure Stacy can get that. I'm sure Bernie's are very much like that as well. But vendor surveys, we hear a lot of that at the end of the season. Of course, it's so much a part of the farmers market movement to ask vendors how they did, and however you do that, whether you do it because you count, you know how much money they make, or you simply say, did you do better this year than last year? You don't have to ask for sales if you're not a market that collects sales information. You can ask things like that. Did you have more products than last year? There are questions, ways to ask those questions without, getting into their sales. Price comparisons, we actually passed it out in the last one, the price comparison we do. We have a volunteer who goes out and does shopping for us. Walmart, Whole Foods, Rouse's, which is our local chain, and the market takes 4 or 5 products, goes to all 4 of those, gives us a comparison, and they're uploaded onto our site, and we look at that and share that information with our vendors. We do very well. We're very pleased by that. We wouldn't have thought that. I talked to so many market managers that think their prices are high. And I'll say, have you ever done a price comparison? And they say, no. I'm like, I bet you'd be surprised. They do seem high, and whereas there are products that are very, that the ingredients cost so much, the value added can be a high price point in a farmer's market. But when you start looking at raw fruits and vegetables, you do pretty well. And what you have in your market, okra in New Orleans is so important, okra in our cooking. Can't find fresh okra in the grocery store. You can find rubbery okra, canned okra, but if you really want to make a good gumbo, you need fresh okra. And so, you can't even get it in those stores. And then partner surveys. This has a lot to do with what Bernie was saying earlier, too, about the organization she works so close with. I'm sure she can name off the top of her head about 15 organizations that her organization works with, and as many of you could. And, sometimes you just want to ask them, how are we doing? Are we meeting your mission? We're partners. Don't just assume they're with you. How are you doing? Google Analytics, we'll go to the next. This is Google Analytics for March, let's say March through February. How's that even possible?
March 3rd, 2008.
Oh, 2008. Thank you. I can
February
read that.
2009.
Glasses. So on your websites, and I think Sarah brought it up, or maybe Aaron did. When you have a website, this is simple to embed into your website. You have the ability. Whoever does their back systems for your website, this is not hard. It's literally a cut and paste job to stick this information, this code, into your website. And you go to Google Analytics, and it'll just give you information about who went, when they went, where they came from. There's so much information. After I do a new tool, one of my new shares, I put stuff out at Farmers Market Coalition. I do an announcement on listserv. I did the analytics for the week after to show my executive director. We had like 700 hits on those pages, the actual pages of market share. It'll show you where they went, how long they stayed, what they looked at, and it's just phenomenal. So this is simple to do, and there's more complicated versions of this. But Google Analytics, very simple, and it's a good way to measure program if you're going to have information on the website. You can use that in your reporting. We recently did that with Kellogg Foundation. So let me talk about these three tools for the most. These are the tools that marketandumbrella.org has been spending the most amount of time on in our measurement work. Besides the creating of our shares, the tools that are available on the website, our focus has always been the relationship of farmers markets to the larger world. We want to be part of the conversation, public space, new urbanists. But, when we hear, and I know people like Bernie hear this, Matt hears it, foundations will say to us, I like markets, but I can't just keep funding markets forever. I'm not sure what's success. What are you getting at? I get it. Yeah, I get it. You're great. But we heard this with Kaiser Permanente recently. There's been other funders. Kaiser Permanente is a good example because they have 35 markets on their hospital campuses. And they are saying to themselves, what is success for these things? They're great, but are the farmers making enough money? Do you all measure that? Is that important? What is success? So that's a great. We saw this policymakers and investors asking these questions, and we started to say, well, if you go back to the first slide about that triple bottom line, we thought, well, let's measure that first. And Ford Foundation, for some reason, said, okay, we'll let you try to measure that. And so we started with economic capital. And, people use economic measurements all the time. Ours measures the sales at the market, sales in the neighborhood around the market, and then the way that the farmers who make the money spend the money in where they go home. This is called the multiplier effect. The reason we chose this method was because this is really how places like Walmart do it. They do measure it by multiplier. They use a slightly different version. We wanted to use a measurement that was the business world understood. We could say, and we were not collecting sales data. like these, excellent, really on both coasts they do. And internally in the country, you find there's not a lot of percentage markets among farmers markets. So we wanted to find a way to measure it. So we decided, we consulted with the pollster in New Orleans, and he said, well, you can ask the shoppers how much they're going to spend. And then you can, kind of tweak that. So we worked to build a tool that did what we call shopper intercept surveys and asked shoppers how much would they spend. I think your shoppers, for the most part, they kind of have a set idea of what they know they're going to spend. They may spend a little less, a little more. I don't know, so-and-so is going to be here, oh my God, but pretty much they have a sense of it. So that's what this does. It measures, very simply, how much shoppers are going to spend or have spent, how much they're going to spend by being there because of the market and the neighboring businesses, and then the multiplier for those farmers for when within retail in your state, it measures how often money stays locally before it leaks out. So it's called SEED because it's sticky. It's about sticky money because it's all about leakage. So SEED is a tool that is available on our website for free for any market to use. It's very simple. It's one page. It's 6 questions. You do a few hundred of them or 10 or 20. It depends on your size of your shopping base. And it's a lot easier than you think it is. It's amazingly simple to use. And that was our way to get around it because we were not going to ask sales information from our farmers for lots of reasons politically. We did not think we were going to get them to do that. We didn't start off doing it mostly the reason. And then the second one actually should be social capital need. That tool is about measuring the town square. So again, we say, oh, we create this town square where we have a place where people feel happy, and Ford Foundation said, well, okay, well, prove that that's possible. And it's all right, we kind of messed around with it and thought, well, let's try to measure something. We measure trust. We measure trust. We measure the trust between vendors and shoppers and vendors and market manager and neighbors in the market. And we do that with a few, like maybe 8 questions. And it's still in pilot stage. We've done it in 4 different locations. And what it's useful for is when those people come to you to add programs, EBT, so on, you can say, well, let me give you a baseline of, before you go out and do outreach, you can see what your communication is and what the interest is among who really knows what you're talking about? Who knows your mission statement? Do they believe in you? And this will help you. So need is that second tool. And then the third tool, feed. Ooh, that's a tough one. We're in a early stage on that. But this is about measuring nutrition at markets. And it's because we all know the public health sector is very interested in markets right now, and that wasn't always the case. We well know. They were like, yeah, those are very nice little things, but we don't think you can be that helpful. Now they really see markets as a way that they can do behavioral change. And so we're going to measure nutritional impact in markets. And we think we're going to do it really in a way that is simple for markets, which is basically to say, we think there's long-term behavioral changes that happen because people come to markets, and that's what we're going to measure. So, for example, your shoppers know to go to the store and say, in my city right now, they could go to the store and say, why don't you have satsumas? Satsumas are in season, citrus. And they know that because they learned about it at the market. They know it's its season. That's change. That's a change in awareness of food. And then they know it's that season. That's the kinds of thing, although there'll be more to it. So basically, at the end of the day, what measurement does is do these things. So you don't do measurement just to do it to make you feel better. You do it because you do it, then you evaluate it. And these are why you evaluate it, because you can do these other things with what you've learned. And you can be talking about simple ways of doing it. How did I do today? Wrap up of events. That's evaluation. There's so many more ways, and I'm sure Bernie will talk about more. But these are the ways that we see that evaluation and measurement help you as a market.